Hello, everyone. This is a wrap-up for Q2 for Historathon 2025. There are two books, one of which I read in entirety, managed to knock out Jocelin of Brakelond just in time for the end of June. So there's that one, and also this is sort of a tie-in with what Vin has been reading as well. Paganism. A History of Paganism, Miracles of Our Own Making by Liz Williams. So this one first. This is a pretty interesting book. It's just over 300 pages. And it sort of covers kind of some standard sort of things to do with paganism in history. So it does cover Rome and what was existing in the British Isles before the Romans arrived, and it does cover the classic stuff to do with witches and witch trials here in England and in Europe, and probably in America as well. I did mention this in a previous video, the contents. So it does start with ancient origins, and it runs through to the modern magic, which I haven't read yet. But it also covers the Georgians and the Victorians and high magic in the 17th century, and so on and so forth. So it is written by, it's very well written. It's very good. I think it's pretty sensible, which is possibly significant in this area of culture. And I think it might be a good idea to read out a couple of things that will make sense of it better than I will explain, I think. So, on page 49, this is good. This links in with a previous video of mine, and I'll leave a link for that in the whatever they call that area below. The description area below. So, yes. Yet, the Druids were not the only people practicing magic and believing in religion in the British Isles at this time. Not just colonized, but colonizer too brought their own gods and beliefs with them. We should remember that in religious terms, the Romans were primarily syncretic. That is to say, rather than trying to eradicate the deities and practices of the people whom they colonized, they tended to merge them with their own. For example, when the Romans established Bath as a commercial and military center with a nice spa attached, instead of stamping out the worship of the local goddess Salis, who had an oracular shrine in the area, they pointed out to the local tribespeople that Salis was similar to their own goddess Minerva, the Roman equivalent of the Grecian Athena, who was dedicated to wisdom and learning. It seems that the tribes were satisfied with this, because the cult of Salis Minerva was established, and there is a head of the goddess still on display at the baths in Bath today. It's that kind of thing. There aren't any footnotes. There aren't any endnotes. There is just some sort of sensible presentation of a case, I suppose. It's very light. And the one thing I picked up about this is that it is really accessible. I mean, I think almost anyone can read this. I'm pretty sure she's written it so that literally, you don't need to been to college. You don't even been to an English college to A level. You just need to be able to read to 16. It's just really nice, quick, easy reading, and to get a further idea of kind of what it's like, a bit later on under a subsection called the witch trials, we have the following. There were thousands of trials across Europe during this time, and that period of time is something like 14 to 1600, perhaps 1450 to 1650. But anyway, There are a variety of reasons as to why Britain's witch trials, though bad, were not as extensive as those conducted throughout Europe. England, rather than Britain, was almost the only European state in which legal trials did not change from accusatory to inquisitory justice, which is indeed one reason why it had relatively few trials and a very high rate of acquittal. I read in another book by a fellow whose name I'm not going to be able to remember probably, that something like 200 people, the majority were women, but a notable number of them were males, it's about 200 were executed for witchcraft across the Middle Ages, and only the Witchfinder General in the 17th century added another 200 or so. So, yeah, Ronald Hutton says that at last we have a history of British paganism written from the inside. So that's sort of that as well. So that's that. That's definitely a really light, easy read introduction to the whole thing. Lots of interesting stuff in there, and very kind of informative. I mean, you know, she's very knowledgeable. But boy, oh boy, yeah. Okay, the Jocelin, which I have read for my last read for Q2 for Historathon 2025, and yeah, I've been looking at the front cover and thinking, you know, that's Saint Edmund being revealed by a wolf. He was hiding in a thicket. And I'm looking at this picture, and what am I missing? Where's the thicket? I mean, okay, you know, there's these little bits of stuff around here. That's all kind of symbolic, presumably. But maybe it's because something to do with he looks like a king. But anyway, so there are 120 pages of main text and 28 pages of explanatory notes, which I found very, very useful, especially because it explains various terms that were in use in the Middle Ages that, of course, we don't use today. Beyond that, one of the striking facts about this, basically what is an ancient text that quite quickly becomes apparent, is the period of time it was written, obviously enough, but it is before Magna Carta, written mainly about and during the reigns of Henry II and Richard I. This becomes particularly evident when Master Jocelin, which I think is his kind of the title he would have been referred to as, when he retells the story of basically his abbot, the Abbot Samson, which is what a lot of this book is about, having a dispute with Richard the Lionheart, which doesn't immediately jump out at me as to being a very good idea. But nonetheless, it turns out, and this is like literally a couple of few sentences, and it reads precisely like this. And it happened too that a certain free tenant of the cellar called Kettle, who lived outside the town gate, and town is in the publisher's brackets, who lived outside the town gate, was charged with robbery, and after he had failed in the duel, was hanged. The convent was embarrassed, and by convent we mean the abbey. The convent was embarrassed by the accusations of the burgesses, who said that if the man had lived inside the town, he would not have been brought to the duel, but would have acquitted himself by the oaths of his neighbours, as is the privilege of those who live within the town. The abbot and the wiser members of the convent Understanding this and being aware that the inhabitants, both within the borough and without, were subject to us, and that all ought to enjoy the same rights within the Banluca, made careful plans to bring this about. There were the words of Master Jocelin from the late 12th century, which I have to say I found kind of really quite emotive, but also incredibly relatable, because it was so personable. Yeah. So I definitely would recommend this as a quick but perhaps quite astonishing little read. The other interesting thing about this book being the period of time it was written. That is, I mean, the action runs from 1180 through to 1202. So the whole of Richard I's reign is included in it, which kind of puts literally someone's actual personable words to something or other that I have that's a survivor from that time, and it is this. On the reverse. That. And that says Tavernensis, because this is from the Tavernensis Mint, which is located in Aquitaine, and that therefore this is a Richard I denier, as in from the Roman denarius, or silver penny for Gascony and Aquitaine. And it is the only coin issue from Richard with his name on it. So basically, you won't be able to. I'll picture this, but basically, starting at the top, there's a cross, and then you'll be able to see R and then I, and it's a bit kind of not fully well struck up, as they say. But it does say Richard. Richard I's coins in England at the time, none of Richard I's coins actually have his name on it. They all have his father's name, Henry, on the coins, and that continued as well through the reign of King John. But that kind of it just seems more poignant to have a coin of Richard I that has his name on it. And of course, this is also from Aquitaine, so of course he goes down to the Third Crusade, passes down to Aquitaine and Gascony, and perhaps stops by at the Tavernensis Mint for some money, which he was usually short of, or might have been short of at various points in time. So, someone had this in their hands in the 1190s, and here it is, as a kind of proof positive, so to speak. Yeah. So there's a little bit of numismatics. They're not particularly rare. I paid about $100 for it, so it's my kind of one-off thing. I got 3 medieval coins, well, 2.5, I suppose, from the other previous video. Yeah, and I decided to fork out some money for this one, and it is a kind of kind of sublime thing to own, really, from my point of view. So yeah, there's that, and well. We look forward to Q3, which I guess has already started today, and hopefully we'll have a video out to do with my hopefuls rather than my possibles. So anyway, yeah, bye for now.